I'm here with Alicia Zoeller, the Director of Community Development for the City of Holyoke. Alicia, this week there was a big meeting at the Senior Center regarding ARPA funds that the city is going to receive. What was it, $22 million more?
So the second half or the second tranche of ARPA funds is going to be about $22 million. We've already allocated the first $22 million.
Okay, and so this is for organizations and businesses, like nonprofits and businesses. Is it for people too?
It's not for people. So it will benefit people eventually, but the applications that are going to be forthcoming are not for individual households. What we're doing is we're seeking proposals from nonprofits, other types of agencies, stakeholders, service providers here in the community that serve families and households in Holyoke.
And so what is the deadline for organizations and businesses to submit their proposal?
So we're currently working under a couple of different deadlines. So Monday night's meeting was about both the Community Development Block Grant Program. We're starting our FY 2023 applications to HUD for those funds. And it was also about how the city plans to use the American Rescue Plan Act funds. So the CDBG grant application round is currently open for, again, agencies, stakeholders, to apply to offer programming. Those grant applications are going to be due on Friday, February 17th by 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and that will close out the CDBG application round. Those funds will hopefully be made available for July 1st contracts. The American Rescue Plan Act materials, both the guidelines and the applications, are going to be released on March 1st. With a deadline of Friday, April 14th, 3 p.m., again, Eastern Standard Time. So stakeholders, agencies, nonprofits will have an opportunity about 6 weeks to put together their ARPA applications.
Where can people get more information? Do they go to holyoke.org/community development?
Yep, so we try to put as much information as possible in 2 locations. The first is our city's website, www.holyoke.org. They go underneath the Community Development Department. We have it pretty well and clearly laid out there, and there'll be links to all of the application materials. The second location is we have tried to increase our presence on social media, and so they can check us out on Facebook at Holyoke OCD, and we continue to post there as well.
Alicia, okay, all this money has to benefit people. So correct. Can you give an example, just like a nameless nonprofit, what could they do that would benefit the people of Holyoke?
So great question. So the ARPA funds and the CDBG funds are, like I said, primarily for the use of low and moderate income residents or specific census tracts here in the city. We're really focused on those areas that were most greatly impacted by COVID and assisting with COVID recovery. In the city of Holyoke, about 68% of all of our residents fall into the low and moderate income category. So we're able to serve not just residents living in what folks think maybe in the downtown area, but really throughout the community. In terms of the kinds of projects, we're looking at housing proposals, both rental rehabilitation to ensure our residents are living in safe, quality housing. We're also looking extensively at home ownership opportunities. We know that home ownership helps build generational wealth, stabilizes neighborhoods, and provides economic opportunities. Holyoke right now is upside down in its renter to homeowner ratios. So we really would like to work to increase the number of homeowners. Other programs that we're thinking about mental health services, access to food, those sort of very basic needs, getting folks back to work, increasing their work capacity if they've lost their jobs during COVID. So things like job training, other kinds of economic opportunities. And then of course, one of the big focuses that we've had is supporting our small businesses.
Yeah, that's important. If the small business part that suffered so much during COVID.
Yeah.
Is there, how difficult will it be for people to apply? Is it going to be like a 10-page proposal type of thing? It is.
So that's always like the $50 million question is how hard are you going to make it to access these funds? Yeah. So we are obligated by the federal government because both ARPA funds and CDBG funds come to us from the federal government. CDBG comes to us from the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development, HUD, and then the ARPA funds come to us from the United States Department of the Treasury. Because of that, because of the federal rules and regulations, there are just some questions and some information that we are bound to collect. So am I going to say the application is easy peasy? No. It does come with strings. It does come with required audits and financial records and that sort of thing. However, we really do try to offer technical assistance. So those small nonprofits who maybe haven't worked in the federal grant world before, we really want to work with them, provide them with the assistance to complete the application. We try to make it as user-friendly as possible. We're using a Google form, so it can be completed online, and then we ask them to just submit paper copies of the backup documentation. On the user end, so that's for the agencies, and we really expect agencies, if they're getting a federal grant, that they're going to have the capacity, the personnel, the knowledge to manage those federal dollars. Because the last thing that any one of us wants is, a thought that these federal funds were mismanaged.
Right.
On the user end, we really want to make sure that for households that need assistance, that we make access to the money and to the services as easy as possible. So if we're doing housing rehab, if we're providing mental health services, if we're doing food shares for a family, we want to make sure that there aren't unnecessary barriers to getting the services into the community. So on that end, we're mindful of that as well.
Alicia, my last question is, for the organizations, businesses that receive money, this is a one-time grant. This is not going to be $22 million spread out over 5 years, for instance.
No. So this second tranche, or the second allocation of ARPA, is about 22 million. This is it. This is the end of the ARPA funds. We've made some adjustments in-house so that we're getting some interest. So we're earning money on the 22 million, but it is going to go away. And all of the money has to be expended by December 30th, 2026. And so we have an internal deadline of having all of the ARPA dollars expended by June 30th, 2026. So the clock is ticking. It's not an annual allocation like the CDBG funds where we apply to HUD every year and they come in. And we're on like our 45th year of CDBG funds. ARPA is it. And so that's why the mayor is really focused on strategic long-term investments, as opposed to thinking about just those public services that are kind of a one-off. We want to be able to look back with this 22 million and be able to look around the community and see the results and see the improvements and see the recovery. The first tranche of funds was really around addressing people's immediate needs. So food, shelter, mental health services, making sure kids were getting back into their usual routines, whether it was through virtual or other kinds of programming. This tranche, these funds, we want to be able to look around in 10, 20, 30 years and say, oh yeah, that was an ARPA funded project. Look at the improvements in this neighborhood. Look at the number of owner occupied houses that we have. It's not just a one-off.
So when we all meet in 20, 30 years at the senior center, we talk about, wow.
Exactly. Exactly. We can look back on this and say, wow.
That's sweet. Thank you very much, Alicia, for the information regarding this. This is a great opportunity for Holyoke.
It really is. I just want to point one more thing out. In terms of the small business support and business support, we're not encouraging businesses to apply for ARPA funds, because what's going to happen is we're going to set up an internal program that will be rolled out on July 1st where businesses can apply at that point. So it's not as if individual businesses should be applying. What we're looking for are programs and providers that can set up programs that can work with our small businesses.
Oh, thank you for making that distinction.
Yeah, so I want to make sure that's really clear. If there's a small business that's watching that needs help now, I'd encourage you to call our office, reach out to myself or to Ashley Sturgis, because we do have small business programs that are currently open and taking applications, but it is not the intent of the ARPA application coming out on March 1st for small businesses, because we'll have a program application for that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
We're making it really easy for small businesses.
I know it's Monday. I know it's 5:30. I know you guys have way more important things to be doing right now. But just know, from the bottom of my heart, you have no idea how much I appreciate you guys being here to help with this critical process. You're going to hear more from Alicia Zoeller, our Community Development Director, as well as the HRIA team, who's going to facilitate tonight and get more into the weeds of this process. But just so you know, this meeting we're having here tonight is one of many meetings we've had prior to this with different stakeholders, and we're just I guess, buttoning things up, because what we want to do for this next tranche of ARPA funds, which is roughly 17 million, $22 million. We're going up. That's great. What we want to do is we want to be targeted, specific, and focused. I do give former Mayor Murphy shouts out all the time and a lot of credit for being as quick and swift as he did during the first round, because it was a very different time with the issues around COVID. But now today, it's yet again a different time. We don't have to be as quick as we needed to help as many organizations and people as we needed to at that time. This time around with 22 million, we can be a little bit more strategic, targeted, specific, and focused. Those are the key buzzwords that I've been using around City Hall lately. So with that said, you're going to learn more, be as honest as possible, give as much critical feedback as you can, because what we collect from you after tonight's exercise is going to help us button things up on our end and move forward with the actual application process as folks, start to plan accordingly on what they want to spend ARPA funds on. So thank you for being here. Be sure you grab anything you eat to drink out there, and if you leave and there's stuff on the table, feel free to grab and take it home, because we don't want to be wasteful. And with that being said, I'm going to pass it to now. Alicia told me to pass it to.
Before we do that, we ask the interpreters to see if there's any folks.
Oh, we're doing interpretation at the same time. Wow.
No, we're going to have a table in the back, and so we're just going to ask folks if they want to interpret to go to the back of the table.
I have just been told that interpretation services are going to be at this table over here.
Yep.
Anybody that needs interpretation services, come to table 12.
Just,
See, I missed that. Oh.
sí, si necesitan traducir vocabulario o necesitan ayuda más tarde, también estamos ahí en la mesa 12, ¿sí? Y si durante la actividad prefieren estar en un grupo hispanohablante, pueden reunirse en la mesa 12. Vale.
Thank you. Alicia.
Good evening, everyone. I want to thank you all for coming out tonight. I see many familiar faces from our July 2021 meeting that we did here. I think we have more folks here tonight than we did back then for Tranche 1. I want to give a quick shout out to Holyoke Media, who's filming tonight's workshop so that we can make sure that it's available on public access for folks who weren't able to attend in person. As the mayor said, the Office for Community Development has been managing the ARPA funds, the American Rescue Plan Act funds, since they arrived here in the city. We've mirrored the ARPA allocation process and the grants management after our successful HUD federal grants that come to the city. So our allocation process, our financial management, is all in line with how we've managed the CDBG funds. To date, that's kept us in good course. I'm confident that down the road, when someone comes and looks in our files and audits them and reviews them, that the city will be in good shape. Our main goal in the Office for Community Development is appropriate and legal management of these funds to ensure that the City of Holyoke in the future is not responsible for payback. So sometimes we're in the not so fun role of having to say no, but really it's about protecting the city's investment in the future. I want to thank, we have one staff person here tonight from our Office for Community Development. That's Ashley Sturgis, who gets the lucky job of managing the children's table and can be found coloring in the back of the room. My other two staff folks that manage the funds were not able to be here tonight. As part of tonight's process and the feedback that you all are going to give, I also want you to know that we're listening closely and we're going to apply all of your feedback to the Community Development Block Grant Funds and the Home Investment Partnership Fund program. Rather than asking you to come out over and over and over and over again for multiple funding sources, we want to hear what you have to say about all the community development needs in the city tonight, and then we'll figure out what needs go with what funds. So just in terms of the full disclosure of that. And most importantly for tonight, I have to thank HRIA, Health Resources in Action. One of the things that the U.S. Treasury required us to do was to ensure that we were reaching to every corner of the community, into every home, in every business, in every stakeholder, in every kind of sector. For a staff of 4, originally a staff of 3, that felt like an overwhelming task to make sure that we were out in the community hearing all of you, setting up meetings like this, being creative with how we collected data, and most importantly, how that data got analyzed. HRIA arrived on our doorstep, I think it was in the summer of 2021, with our Board of Health, and literally it was like this. Hi Holyoke, we're HRIA, and we're here to help, and it's not going to cost you a thing. Yeah, right. I'm thrilled to say it hasn't cost the City of Holyoke a penny. HRIA has held our hands through the entire process and has brought with them a team of experts in data collection, data analysis, health equity, COVID recovery, public health responses, and all those things that have gone with COVID from the very beginning. HRIA helped the Office of Planning and Economic Development and the Board of Health do a really comprehensive business survey, as well as a business outreach guide on overcoming COVID in the workplace. And they've continued to work with us in the Office for Community Development around doing community survey assessments. Tonight's meeting is our last public meeting of the process, and so I'm thrilled to turn this over to HRIA and let them share with you all the data that's been collected, and then quickly move into an exercise to hear from all of you. If you have questions about the process piece of it, we have put the calendars, our funding calendars, on the front table. I also have some business cards. We don't have a lot of time tonight for individual questions, but please feel free to call me, email me, reach out through our Facebook page or our website, and ask any questions. So without further ado, happy to have Erica from HRIA.
Hi folks, thank you so much for being here tonight. My name is Erica Gaitan. I'm a Senior Manager at Health Resources in Action. As Alicia mentioned, we are a nonprofit public health organization really committed to making sure community engagement is at the forefront of all decisions as organizations are thinking about allocating their federal funding. So we're funded by the Barr Foundation, who said, you know what, you all as a nonprofit have more capacity a lot of times than cities do. And so we've taken the opportunity and partnered with cities all across Massachusetts, like your great city of Holyoke, who is really interested and committed to equitable processes. So we've done a series of meetings, the first being with department heads, the second being with the mayor's advisory councils. I see some familiar faces here. And so this is a culmination of those meetings to be able to share what we've learned so far, and more importantly, how is this resonating with you? Is there anything missing as we're thinking about the next process of the ARPA phases for the rest of the money that will be allocated? And really hear your feedback. And so we're going to be doing an activity later on this evening with some themes that have come up from each of these categories. And we want to hear what you think. As the mayor mentioned, we want to hear your feedback, what's resonating, what do you see as critical as we're thinking about the last tranche of ARPA funding. So now I'm going to hand it over to my colleague, Cynthia Espinosa, so she can do an intro to us.
So again, Cynthia Espinosa, Holyoke resident, also very excited to be here representing and a colleague of HRIA. I also want to give a shout out to other colleagues who are here from HRIA, so Ben Wood in the back, Mo Barbosa, and Lisa, so we'll be here facilitating tonight. So as Erica mentioned, we're a nonprofit based out of Boston, again, free of charge to the City of Holyoke, to offer this process to facilitate community engagement when it comes to ARPA funding. Do people know what ARPA means? Yeah? But yeah, hopefully by the end of the day, y'all like talking and all this stuff. Okay, good. So again, if it seems like most of you know, so this is federal funding. It really comes like it's a great opportunity for investment to recover from the pandemic. So again, the City of Holyoke received $38 million. Some of it was already allocated, as mentioned by the mayor, by the former acting mayor, Murphy. And we will shift this around, but there is about $22 million, correct? That is left over that needs to be allocated, and you're all participating in the process of that. So we just wanted to share a little bit more about what the requirements. So usually federal funding are very restricted and can be very specific. With ARPA, there's a little more flexibility when it comes to the priority population served. So we're looking at must respond to public health or negative economic impact. Disproportionately impacted household communities, so low income, qualified census tracts, qualify for federal benefits like SNAP, WIC, etc. And also receiving services by tribal governments. The applicants are different compared to other federal programs. You have from community-based organizations, nonprofits, cultural organizations, schools, and something really unique, small businesses. I know there's other federal grants for that, but ARPA helps cover this piece. And organizations are projects that are fiscally sponsored, and that's key, because usually not a lot of federal funding can offer that. And the types of eligible funding. So you have programs, projects, and capital expenses. So just wanted to share, and Erica kind of gave you a brief overview. So you know the City of Holyoke has really worked in engaging the community in different ways, continue with municipality staff to residents when it comes to really recover from the pandemic. So the mayor to date has engaged over 650 residents, 80 small businesses, and 66 organizations through meetings, the advisory councils that the mayor formed, and a statement of interest that recently was done. So again, partnering with us to really help support this process to allocate the remaining funds that the city has. So HRA is going to lead the facilitation. We already started that. We started again with department heads, the advisory councils, the public meetings that we are hoping to continue on. So it'll be about 4 to 6 meetings in total. And we really, the purpose of these is to spread awareness and promote transparency, and also ask, do you know about ARPA? You know that this is an opportunity for your community. Identify areas of alignment and priorities, and develop a funding strategy so that then the mayor and city officials have a way to make a decision where to put these monies to the community. Yeah. So I'll pass it back to Erica.
Thank you, Cynthia. So I know we're throwing a lot of information at you. I want to see if there's any question, maybe 1 or 2 questions before we get into. There's been a ton of information collected through this process, and a lot of times that information doesn't get shared back with the community. And so our goal here is to share back what we've heard so far, and then the bulk of the meeting will be in smaller groups so that you can talk to each other. Yep. Sorry?
How many total residents in Holyoke right now?
How many total residents in Holyoke right now?
39,000.
39,000 says
How
Alicia.
about businesses?
Businesses, I think we have to,
I'm just asking, did you guys know the number of meeting businesses that were contacted by this?
Yep, so when it comes to community engagement, the most important practice in government, which is also the hardest part to do. So what we try to do is utilize the services and functions available to us to do the best we can to reach our tentacles as far as we can, but to your point, reaching 100% of the population is always a challenge for any local government. That is why it's important, and I see a lot of new faces in this room, which is great, and the mayoral advisory councils, which at that meeting, we had all the members that are part of those councils participate. And then surveys, there was both a business survey, there were resident surveys. You do the best you can to get your tentacles out as much as possible, and also hope that the people that you're working with is spreading and sharing as well. So do the best you can, but reaching 100%, as I will admit to, is extremely difficult.
I wasn't looking for 1% or 1%, but 49,650.
So I think the HIRA, as far as the business surveys were concerned, we're going door to door and completed as much.
door to door.
You can speak to that.
Yeah, we did door to door outreach. It was available in English and Spanish, online and door to door. So as the mayor mentioned, this is a sample of what is going on in the community. It's not exhaustive. We also use the community health needs assessment which was engaged for a couple of years over what are the issues in the community. But part of that is really thinking about the feedback today and the rest of the allocations, and you all using your voice in this space to say, do these themes resonate with me? What's missing from here that we need to consider as the rest of the dollars are being allocated? Yep. Yes.
Can't hear you.
Yes, and so the question was, the question of who is eligible for ARPA funding? Yes, so there's a copy of it in your slides. I don't know if you want to talk about that at all, of ARPA allocations, who is eligible for those.
I didn't hear her mention infrastructure. Is that?
Infrastructure is definitely one of the categories, and we're going to talk about that in our small spaces. But the overview is that ARPA dollars have more flexibility. It is meant to promote equitable recovery, and there's specific census tracts. And then anything else you want to add to that piece?
We can put the slide back up there if we want to, if that's
Just one back.
Yeah.
Right there. Infrastructure is eligible.
Yes, infrastructure is definitely eligible, and something we've heard in multiple meetings. And so one of the stations that you're going to be talking to today is about the themes we've heard throughout infrastructure to see if we've captured the needs that folks are seeing in that capacity. All right, now we are at time to go into the data. So a little bit about what we found. Again, this is not an exhaustive list, but we wanted to share back. There's been a lot of data collection efforts to date. And the first was with the resident survey. So probably many of you in the crowd answered the resident survey where the mayor and his leadership team were trying to get a sense of what are those needs that are coming up to the top for folks. 688 residents filled that out, and there was about 5% who weren't from Holyoke, so we removed them from the sample. We separated this by homeowners and renters because we did see some slight differences. I know it's a little bit hard to see on your screen. When we do our small group activities, the themes are going to be on your flip chart so that you can talk about them a little bit more. But verbally, just to give you a sense of what community residents shared, renters really struggled with paying their rent. About 52% of folks who submitted a resident survey said that they were unable to meet their rent. The second highest was about bills and services. So residents who were renters who submitted this survey said that they were unable to pay for electricity or gas services, including kind of heating and cooking, water, and things like that. And then lastly, the third highest need that came up for those who were renters was lack of affordable food. So we really hear that with inflation and things that we're seeing, that the price of food is really going up. We asked residents who submitted the survey, what are some of the priorities that you think are coming up to the top for you as Holyoke thinks of the last tranche of ARPA funding? Affordable housing opportunities. 1 in every 2 survey respondents said affordable housing was a key priority for them. Followed by public services, and that was helping households with things like food, mental health services, youth programming, and more than 45% of participants said that that was really second on their priority list. Third, help for small businesses to recover from negative economic impacts was the third most submitted issue that came up in the resident survey, followed by about 1 in every 3 residents saying that broadband and internet access were top of mind for them. We also asked and wanted to dig a little bit deeper into what services were you thinking about, since that rose so high up. Across the board, homeowners and renters said that mental health services were really top of mind, especially for young people, especially for seniors, really thinking about how are we reaching our community residents who are struggling with mental health. Child care services was the second most talked about issue in community services, where they were thinking about daycare, the cost of daycare, summer camps, after school programming. For homeowners, the third issue was a little bit slightly different for homeowners and renters. Neighborhood services, so safety came up for homeowners a lot, as they were thinking about what are we doing with code enforcement, with community safety, with cleanups and things of that sort. Whereas renters, again, this issue of food was really top of mind, and that was the third most pressing issue. There was a lot of open-ended responses, as you can imagine, and so we just put the first 1,000 words that came up. And again, those themes really resonate with housing, affordability, businesses. You'll see water, streets, infrastructure up there, taxes. People felt really strongly about taxes. So that's just a snippet of the community resident survey. The findings will be available on the City of Holyoke website so that folks can really take a look at each data point if they'd like to see it in more detail. But we wanted to give that high-level overview. So next we mentioned the business survey. So we were interested if business issues were also resonating with what the residents were saying. So as the mayor mentioned, we had 80 total businesses, which is, there are many businesses in Holyoke, but we were really grateful that these 80 were willing to talk to us and tell us what some of their priorities were. We asked, what are the 3 most important issues that you want the City of Holyoke to focus on with businesses in the next 1 to 3 years? Similarly, they said that utilities and bill supports were really, really important for small businesses in the area. And that could look like direct cash support, which was about 37% of the businesses in the city who said that. And then staffing and hiring, also keeping your employees happy was really top of mind, and that rose to the 3rd really top issue. The 4th here I want to bring up is marketing and communications efforts. We also heard this from some of the advisory committee members, really thinking about how are we showcasing Holyoke? How are we helping our small businesses talk about their services, get it online, and things of that nature? And we said, in the next 1 to 3 years, how does your business plan to change? And what they said is over 64% said that they want to adapt their business strategies to really be in the 21st century, be competitive. They want to improve their goods and services and adapt their management practices to be better and more competitive in the workplace. And then lastly, the increase or expand digital technologies. So business owners are really thinking about, how do I get a website out? How do I increase my digital marketing? How do we really have and keep a pulse in the community so residents know that we're here? So that was a little bit about the business and the resident survey. Anything else before I go into the community health needs assessment? 688 responded to the community, yes. Right, so just a snippet. Next, we're gonna look at the community health needs assessment, which engaged many more residents. And so we're trying to pull from a lot of different data sources. So we'll go right there and then right here. Raise his hand. Renters, homeowners, proportions. I don't have that at the moment, but we can get back. Alicia, you can write that question down.
Wait a minute. So you say a snippet.
Yes.
Is that acceptable to have a snippet?
So I would say this is part of the process of continued engagement, where we have one survey, the community health needs assessment that Holyoke Medical Center has pioneered for years, and we're trying to get as much as possible in these iterative meetings. So this is not an exhaustive list or a final, it's one point in time.
So you gotta remember, the goal here for us is to get our finger on the pulse. And so when we look and evaluate each of these different available tools to us, it helps us understand what, and it's not always definitive like 100%, but it helps you at least gauge enough information to understand what the priorities in these different areas in the community could be. The important thing for folks to know in the Shana, and as you receive this, it doesn't at all mean, just understand, what we're trying to do with the information available is help understand the community health and need. So the community health needs assessment, for example, done by the Holyoke Medical Center, hospitals every 3 years have an IRS mandate to do what they call health needs assessments, and they're it's just another tool, a community engagement tool that was conclusive of their own robust
engagement system that they created to help finalize this tangible document that helps understand what community health are. Now, you'll see the orders of priority that were identified. It doesn't mean that one priority is more important than the other priorities, because every health issue is important. But instead helps us at least gauge what the top, is there another word for priority? Because I feel like that's such a bad word sometimes. The top consideration or health issue, when we talk about social determinants of health, and we take this information, and as we try to disseminate CDBG, now we're talking about ARPA, or even how we allocate our resources within appropriation, our own budgets, understanding, because everything we do in local government directly impacts health. So this just kind of helps decision makers how to further figure out how to allocate these limited resources. So that's what she's going through. She's going through the different tools that were done to engage community, taking the results from that and trying to make sense of it. Once she goes over this, she's going to go over other data and translate how that, how that connects with what we're trying to do here.
Thank you, Mary. Yeah, and a big thing that I would say back is a lot of times in cities, so much information is collected and never shared back. And decisions are just made from the top down. And so this is an attempt of being able to share, these are the 4 or 5 sources that the mayor and his team are looking at, and we want to share that back with you to see if there's anything else coming up for you. We had a question over here. Okay.
She gave it up.
All right. The mayor mentioned the community health needs assessment, which the Holyoke Medical Center conducted, and we think that's very critical in thinking about what are the needs and what are the considerations as you go into these small group activities and share what's resonating for you. They had 15 community meetings as part of their process with 130 residents. They also had 30 one-on-one stakeholder interviews with leadership across Holyoke, and they did a community survey with an additional 500 community residents. And what came up with them was a lot of topics that we've already talked about, but they identified the top 5 health-related concerns that were most common for residents in Holyoke. And what the medical center is really looking at over the next couple of years is mental health, which we've talked about, low income and financial challenges, affordable housing, substance use, and obesity. So you can see how those themes are related and a little bit different in their outreach efforts. They also said, hey, in our outreach efforts, we identified some priority populations that the medical center is going to be thinking about as they're looking at their efforts. Youth and children came up as their first priority population, and seniors, especially those with language barriers, were identified as 2 priority populations to consider as they're thinking about their programming over the next couple of years. Other priority populations that came up, or areas where we really need to think a little bit more deeply, are with low-income residents, residents that lack transportation, people who struggle with drug addiction, LGBTQ residents, those with chronic mental illness, those who are experiencing homelessness, and veterans. And lastly, there was an LOI process where the city was trying to get a sense of where are funding priorities for groups to be able to submit some initial things. Alicia, do you want to talk about that for a second?
Explain LOI.
Sure. Can you explain LOI, Alicia?
Sure. So one of the things that we probably should have said right off the bat is that when you're thinking about how to allocate 22 million or so, it's as if the way we've envisioned it in City Hall is that we're looking at a large conference table and we have a puzzle laid out in front of us. And when the puzzle is all complete, that's going to be how the city has determined it's going to expend the 22 million that's left. That's how we're going to eventually overcome COVID and move beyond this. But in order to put that puzzle together, we have all these different, 39,000 residents, but it's one piece of the puzzle. We did a business survey. There's another piece of the puzzle. We looked at the health survey and the work that the Holyoke Hospital did. There's another piece of the puzzle. The mayor's met with department heads. There's another piece. The mayor's met with 58 advisory council
Zoom meeting 2 weeks ago, there's another piece of the puzzle. Then we do our statement of interest. So what we did was we felt like we were missing folks and entities when we did the community survey and then we did the business survey. We felt like there was still a pool of people out there that we were missing. So we put out what's called an LOI, or letter of interest. It actually was called a statement of interest. And we asked folks who may be interested in accessing ARPA funds, if you could access ARPA funds, how would you use them? It wasn't a funding application. It wasn't going to be used to make funding decisions for that particular proposal, but it was an opportunity for people to weigh in that didn't fit in the box of a community survey or fit in the box of a business survey. So once again, if you think about that conference table, the letters of interest, we had an overwhelming response. I think we had $50 million in response. $50 million of projects that were proposed under this LOI. So there's another piece of the puzzle. Tonight, your responses are going to be added as another piece of the puzzle. And so the goal is, by the time we get done with this process in the next couple of weeks, and we roll out the ARPA applications and the ARPA proposal for projects and what we're going to fund, that we've hit as many people, entities, interests in the community. So I hope that helps in terms of the context of where we're at. So I'll turn back to Erica to talk about LOIs, letter of interest, or statements of interest.
Thank you, Alicia. Just a quick one that we wanted to share here is that there was an overwhelming response. The mayor said there's about 22 million left on the table. For the statement of interest, over 68 organizations or entities submitted that they were interested in ARPA funds, and it totaled over 50 million. So you can tell that that need is really heavy, and there's a lot of folks who are interested in this funding. 35 of those were 501c3s or nonprofit organizations. Municipal entities also submitted statements of interest for projects. There was also LLCs or small businesses, and then some private citizens, fraternal organizations. About 5 of those submitted applications. So we can go to the next one, Sophia, for time. Just to give you a sense of the type of new versus existing programs, the blue was a new service or a new program that entities were applying for their statement of interest to say, hey, if I were to submit a project, this is kind of what we want to see. And so you'll see that about half of them were new services or programming, and for negative impact assistance to households, many of them were existing services that people wanted to make stronger. So there's a lot of data on this that will be posted on the website, but what we wanted to share, the purpose of the statement of interest was that there's a lot of need. Over 50 million was proposed for some projects. And so like Alicia mentioned, another puzzle piece. And each meeting we're building upon the next to make sure that the themes are represented so that when the mayor and the leadership team has the next conversation of what are we asking for in our request for proposals, how are we going to be scoring it, how are we going to think about it and look at it, they can take into consideration all of these pieces. This is a very busy table, but for the data nerds who want to see everything on one page, this is all the color-coded pieces of what rose to the top in each of these. This is much easier to see online, and so we're going to post this after the meeting. But by color, it's basically showing you each of the data sources we've gone through today, showing that affordable housing, utility and bills, food, public services, all of those are kind of rising to the top. So I'm not going to go through each of these, but for those of you who like to see things on one page, this will be on the city website at a later time. So what's next? That's the data we have so far. You all are such a critical part of this to start thinking about what is left over on the table, how are we thinking about it. So we've put all of these data pieces and organized them by topic. There are 5 topics around the room. Mo, if you can say hello. That's one. Ben, hi.
Say what the topics are.
Yes. So we have housing, which rose to the top, and housing and all of the sub-priorities that have come up so far in the surveys, with the advisory councils. We're going to have a small group go over there for about 10 minutes and then rotate to number 2. Mo, can you give us a wave to number 2? That is mental health and well-being. With all of the some dots with your priorities and kind of think about those when you're there and say, this is coming up for me, here's a dot, really important piece there. After that, you're gonna rotate to group 3. Lisa, give a wave, and that's infrastructure, where things like water has come up a lot, sewer overflowing drainage, we have landfill trash, just a bunch of things that have come up in these various surveys. So your group will go there and talk for a little bit, use your dots that each of you will get to kind of vote on the things that are coming up the most for you, what you see as true in your lived experience. And then you're gonna rotate to group 4, schools and education, which was another key piece that we've been hearing a lot. You'll talk about it as a group amongst other residents. Again, you'll put your dots where you're really feeling like, yes, this is a priority for me. And then you'll go to the 5th station over there, small business and economy. So that is it. Everyone has a name tag. If you haven't had your name tag on yet, it should be at the table. There's a small number.
Come on over here.
Yeah, 2. You're